I will not be introducing everybody. I'll let Tim do that. So Tim, come on up.
Hey, thanks. Hi there. So there's been a lot of talk about cloud computing over the last few months. A lot of people seem to think that cloud computing means just infrastructure in the cloud. A lot of people, when they saw our lineup here, they said, well, gee, why don't you have Amazon featured prominently? And my response was, well, you know what? Everybody kind of understands the Amazon model of utility computing. But what they don't understand is the full range in which cloud is starting to enable new business models. And what we wanted to try to do here is to explore the range of possibility in the cloud and to think and to push your thinking a little bit further in terms of how do you make money in the cloud? Who is going to make money? Why? What are the levers of competitive advantage? And we put together really an all-star cast of people who have very different approaches to the cloud. Paul Maritz, now the CEO of VMware, after many years ago ran Microsoft Office, left because Microsoft didn't quite get the potential of the internet in the way that Paul saw it. He then did a startup, which was eventually acquired by VMware, which is what brought him there. Marc Benioff, founder and CEO of Salesforce.com. Salesforce building an enormous platform as a service. They've defined a new category of cloud that I think is very different than the one that maybe is the first naive approximation of what people think of as cloud. Dave Girouard, president of Google Enterprise. These are apps in the cloud. Kevin Lynch, CTO of Adobe. Well, what does Adobe have to do with the cloud? I think you'll be surprised by Kevin's answer. And with that, I'd like to welcome out Paul, Marc, Kevin, and Dave. I have to ask. I think they got my mic backwards relative to where it ought to be, if I'm supposed to be over here. Actually, tell you what, I should probably sit over there because of where they put my mic. So whatever they told you, let's do it differently.
Fantastic, Tim. Glad you got this panel organized.
All right. So, first off, because this is a pretty big panel, I don't want to sort of address questions to you guys individually, although maybe I'll ask one or two that are pointed. What I really want to do is throw out some general topics, and I'd love to get you guys, talking among yourselves. If you think somebody says something really stupid or something where you think you have a better answer, don't feel bad about jumping in and talking. But I want to start just with how each of you just started maybe with Paul and coming back this way. Give us your minute that sort of just says what your stake is in the cloud game and how you think about cloud in your business.
Sure. Well, obviously, at VMware, our stake is actually enabling businesses who have a huge investment in existing applications to be able to take advantage of the cloud in the future. And that means that they have to be able to abstract away those applications from their current underlying infrastructure and get to a position where they have the option of being able to slide those applications into the cloud in the future. So VMware in particular, we're about basically supplying the underlying plumbing that will enable companies to become more cloud-like in their internal operations, and in doing so, start to leverage the external cloud. That's one stake. As you mentioned, I spent the last 5 years of my life working on a small company that I helped start, which has a different stake in the cloud, which is really about, started from the observations that over the years, myself and many others in the PC industry were really about enabling devices. And I think we're in a huge transition in the world away from a device-centric world to an information-centric world. If you think about it, all of us are increasingly characterized by a body of digital information that's going to live with us all our lives over a period of decades, and it's going to certainly outlast the life of any device that we have, and interestingly needs to outlast the life of any application that we have. And if that's going to be the case, how do you get information and information about information to be correctly stored so that you can outlive any device or any application? And that leads to what I think will be one of the other interesting business models around the cloud, which is sort of the notion of the information bank, which is none of us put our money under mattresses anymore. We put our money in banks.
So it can shrink.
It's not a great analogy at this time. But we do so for three reasons. One, to protect it. The other is to get convenient access. But above all, you put it there because value can be added to it. And I think that in the future, all of us will have an information custodian who holds our information and really actually operates an information marketplace around that information that allows a new generation, a new type of body called an independent information provider to come up and basically mash up additional information over your information, and so doing adding value to your information. So I think we're going to see these two different business models evolve.
All right, Kevin.
Well, I think if you look at the context of where we're at right now, we're really in the fourth generation of applications. The early days was mainframe computing, where you had very local access to a machine, not a very rich experience. The second generation was PC computing, where we had graphical user interface, which is very rich, but still very local computing model, not very networked. The third generation was the web, and the web got us to very broad reach of applications, so in that third generation, but still not a very rich interface. In fact, we took a step backwards with the web, where it was almost like mainframe computing again with green screen terminals. And what we see happening right now, and the role Adobe's playing, is in this fourth generation of software where we're getting back the richness of these applications, but we're also maintaining the reach of them. So the best combination of basically worldwide reach of software with what people came to expect from desktop computing, getting back the lost treasures of the desktop, if you will, and really having the best of both. So we're playing a role in terms of helping to enable that revolution to happen with a combination of the computing in the cloud worldwide and that local rich interaction with technologies like Air or Flash Player on the client, and working to get those available to everybody on all OSs around the world. We've done a great job with Flash on that to date. Air is something that's new that we're working on getting going right now. And then on the tooling side, that's most of how it impacts our business, is we sell tools. We make some of the best tools in the world. We're really focused on that. And so as people change how they make things and change their way they construct software to run not only on the client but also on the cloud, we're changing our tooling to match that as well, to help people debug those experiences and deploy them. And where do you put your code when you're deploying these things across lots of clients and on the cloud as well? And so it's changing how we're working on our tooling. And it's a new opportunity for us to do things like server technologies, where we've been growing space there, and in some degree applications like moving things like Photoshop into the cloud with Photoshop.com and Acrobat with Acrobat.com. So that's starting to change some of our traditional businesses as well. But our early focus is really on the enabling technologies from Adobe's perspective.
So we want to come back to Photoshop.com and ask about margins in the cloud, but we'll put that aside for the moment. Dave?
Sure. Well, I mean, Google's a 10-year-old company. We are a native citizen of the cloud. So I would just say, for us, it's another term placed on what we've been doing since the day we were born. And our goal isn't really to create a cloud-like experience or help you think about the cloud, but to bring you entirely into the cloud. And what I think is unique about Google is we are universally focused on a user experience and the quality of the experience for users. If you look at what Google looked like in 1997, 98, when it was still Larry and Sergey at Stanford, a simple white page in a search box, and look at it today, it's largely unchanged. Yet the amount of capability and capacity that underlies a Google search engine is obviously orders of magnitude different. And I think that's a very special thing about Google, and it says a lot about our approach to bringing technology to users. And I'll also say, with respect to business computing and the enterprise, et cetera, which is the part of Google I'm responsible for, we think there's an amazing disconnect between the innovation and the user experiences delivered in the consumer world and the stagnant, unenlightened world of enterprise computing that essentially puts the user experience far in the background and focuses on business process. So our goal really at Google, and particularly my part of Google, is to sort of break down that barrier and say we can deliver the innovation, the user centricity in a very economic way to users, whether they be in the workplace or whether they be at home, because in the end, it's the same people. And the last thing I would just say about Google, that we're really early on but is we want to open up the Google platform, the Google stack, to developers in many, many ways. And in the end, if we do it right, you're going to have the same access to Google that our own developers do. And we're a long way from that. But we believe we have a really compelling web platform. It's why a lot of the best computer science graduates in the world want to come to Google. And we want to make it that attractive to everybody.
All right. Marc?
Well, at Salesforce, our approach has been to get the enterprise on the cloud. And we do that through our applications, but we also do that through our platform. And our platform strategy has evolved tremendously because we have, of course, our core customers who are rapidly building and extending their applications onto our systems. We just finished our conference yesterday down the street. We had 10,000 of them there, and it was very exciting. We're seeing tremendous interest from ISVs also in using our platforms to completely build their applications as well as enter our customer base. I know one of our common customers is Thomson Reuters, and their new workstation that they showed at our conference was built now natively on our platform, the replacement to Thomson One. So that's extremely
you're
exciting.
You're a cloud-native company.
Well, we're an internet company, so we're 100%. We don't. I don't know if you know this, but we don't have software. Yeah.
So you guys, I'm sure everyone here has heard Larry Ellison's rant recently, where he said cloud is latest buzzword, meaningless, low margin. Who really cares? I will use the name, but we're going to do the same thing we've always done. What do you think of that?
I think that Sun Tzu said it best: when weak, feign strength. So that's his approach, and that's the right approach for him. But the right approach for these companies who are strong and developing and who have tremendous organic growth, which is true for every company here. It's because we've embraced these new technologies. We don't have that kind of acquisition strategy, kind of picking up the old model. We're creating the new model. It's a
Anybody
completely
else have
different
a
approach.
thought about that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what functionality you're talking about in the cloud, and there'll be higher value functionality, like Salesforce.com has really high value business process management and technology to help Salesforce be effective. If you look at services like pure storage or just pure processing, I think those are going to be lower margin businesses, and I think companies like Amazon, for example, or others are well positioned where they have a low margin business model to serve just basic technologies that are enablers like that. Companies that are used to higher margins in software business, that won't be as attractive an opportunity.
So how do you guys think about the fact that the margins do look lower? I mean, Larry did in fact make an accurate point that your margins are lower than his margins, Marc, and fact is, Google has great margins in the advertising business, but I don't know that you would say that you've got great margins in the sort of enterprise delivery of Google apps.
Well,
again, I don't know, VMware, you're really still selling enterprise software, even though it's a cloud enabler. What's this marketplace going to look like?
I think it's a faulty argument, because margins. Now, obviously, the classic software business is great because you build it once and you sell it, and you have roughly zero distribution costs, and that all sounds well and good. But the bigger question is how much value we're delivering, how much people are willing to pay for that. In the end, margins come from a differentiated product that a person or a company are willing to spend their money on, and at some level, at the cost at which you deliver it. And because a cloud-based solution, so to speak, there are some costs of distribution absorbed by the provider. In my mind, in no way over the long trend suggests that it will be lower margin, because in the end, you're delivering a lot more value to that customer. And if you're a smart business person, over time, you're gonna reap the rewards.
Figure out a way to capture that value.
Tim, I think it's no different from any other technology business, which unless you have a fundamentally differentiated product, it's going to be low margin. Businesses that have low barriers to entry don't command a lot of margin, and there are two ways in technology to get a differentiated value. One is to have truly unique functionality that people can't get easily anywhere else, or else to have a platform that has a real ecosystem around it. And you're going to have to do one or both of those to make money in this business.
Yeah, although, that's certainly true. I guess the thing that, I've been driven in all my thinking about Web 2.0 by analogies to the PC market, where hardware was once a source of great value, became commoditized by the architecture of the PC. Value migrated to software. Software now being commoditized in many ways. Value is migrated to these data-driven, services that literally get better the more people use them, increasing returns in data. And that seems to me that cloud has, that some cloud strategies have that characteristic, whereas other cloud strategies, for example, the one Amazon is pursuing, are really trying to say, no, we're going to embrace the low margin part of this business. We'll be really good at it, and we'll make a really big business that way. Somebody else, like Marc, you're trying to build a platform where people, you build that developer ecosystem, you extract more value that way, for example. So,
and
how does that play out over the next?
I think these strategies can coexist. Just like in the PC ecosystem, you have some people who are happy operating at the low margin end of it.
Yeah, but
there are other people
and I agree with Paul, actually. At our conference, we were a lot of our customers are, of course, use our application family, which is very popular.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, now they're increasingly using our platform to build their own applications, and that's the Force.com platform. But at this conference, we paid attention to what are customers asking us for, and they want more interoperability within clouds. And so we had, Dave was there, he spoke to our customers, he spoke to a room with, all of them there, talking about the deep integration that we now have with Google Apps, Google's AdWord platform. Our customers have bought $135 million of AdWords this year. We have thousands of our customers now using Dave's apps, and we're also now fully integrating with the Google, App Engine and various APIs. We had Amazon there, and their head of web services. We're deeply integrating with S3 and EC2, so our developers can access those services when needed. And we also had Sheryl Sandberg there from Facebook, and we showed how one of our customers, Starbucks, has built My Starbucks Idea, which is a native application that runs on our platform, but it's on their website, now interoperating inside Facebook, as well as a recruiting application that we're pioneering with Dell running inside Facebook. The idea that these clouds can interoperate and have this kind of additional value-added services, this is very powerful.
No, I agree. It's hugely powerful for the consumer. Where do you guys, is there enough money to go around? I mean, if you look, again, going back to the history of the PC, companies like Digital that were used to extracting margins from hardware went out of business, got acquired.
You have to remember that you have to look at this as a continuum over time, and of course, Larry Ellison's comment is the same comment, that IBM used against him when his company was 9 years old in 1986.
Yeah.
And
so when are you going to buy Oracle? Do you think that's an outcome one day, as kind of like Digital got bought by Compaq?
Well, just getting back to the continuum, in our last fiscal quarter where we grew 49%, we also passed $1 billion in annualized revenue run rate, and that's an important milestone for us.
Yeah.
And of course, you have just tremendous success of other companies as well, growing in the enterprise using the cloud as well as the consumer with Google and others. And but to compare it to mature dying models, like Oracle or SAP, which is maybe already dead. It's not. It's a little bit of apples and oranges, and if you look at our.
What about Paul? I mean, you're actually helping people to migrate these traditional applications and make them interoperate with the cloud. How does Marc's story sound to you? How does that?
I think for a long time, again, these things are going to coexist. I mean, no matter how fast Marc grows and represents the future, I mean, take SAP R3, for better or for the worse. There's a huge number of businesses in the world, very big businesses, who are wedded to SAP for a long, long, long time to come. And that's not to talk about the internal applications that they have written already. They simply do not have the option of abandoning that structure. So you have to have a way, however, where they can start to run their lives more efficiently and get out of the plumbing business.
But how do you, for example, Mark's saying, hey, I work with Dave, I work with Amazon, what about these guys? They're saying I'm running R3, but wow, I want some of that coolness that's happening over there at Google.
But that is happening in the SAP base. So DuPont, SAP's largest customer, they don't use SAP CRM anymore. They use us. They use the interoperability of these platforms. And Dave's got a lot of great examples as well.
I think it's true to say nothing ever goes away in IT. Mainframes are running away. Everything is additive. But to me, the pertinent question is, where is the innovation happening? Where are new things happening? I don't know what the latest innovation in the mainframe business is, but I don't read about it very much. So just because something is still around doesn't mean it can't be a great business for somebody, but it's not going to be what's driving developers and driving innovation, which is, I think, what's important. There is an opportunity, and we're doing some interesting work in this area, where, regardless of where the data resides, if it's behind the firewall, because incredible amount of data will be behind the firewall for decades to come, and really making that invisible to the user and being able to sort of blend the worlds of on-premise technology with cloud-based computing. Because in the end, what you care about is the best experience for your users and not leaving them in the past. And I think there's a good opportunity, but I agree. SAP R3, once you have SAP in a factory, it doesn't come out, right? I mean, that's the reality. And until something big changes, and I think it will, it'll just take a while.
We're seeing the value move very much to the quality of engagement with the user. Like, that is where the focus is, both inside the enterprise, starting to happen now. Some people call it the consumerization of enterprise. You're using all these great technologies out on the public internet. Why can't my business analysis software be like that? And so what I'm seeing happen at Adobe is many of our partners are starting to provide web front ends or skins on top of all these existing systems without necessarily ripping them all out, because it's way hard to do that, but instead providing a richer interface on top of them. And we're working with Salesforce.
But let me ask you, are you guys smoking something at Adobe? Because there's sort of a level where, maybe tell us how much, these guys are adopting Air, for example, or how is that rich user experience?
Yeah, we've made great progress on that. So with SAP, first of all, they OEM Flex and put it in Netweaver. So one of the ways you can actually build an interface in SAP, which makes it look a lot more current than their other interface technologies, is to use Flex and Flash to do that. That's already happening, and it's part of their deployment. With Intuit, they have a big shift of their software for small businesses moving to the web. They're betting wholly on Flash and Flex as the user interface layer for those applications.
So effectively, what you see is you really think you are becoming the cloud, the tooling for the cloud front end. Do you guys sort of experience that at all in, like, say, Salesforce?
Yeah.
And
we're working together with Salesforce as well. And I think there's we've already shown some of the stuff that we've done with Salesforce in terms of synchronizing data across the client and the cloud and making your business applications work even when you're traveling at a customer's account. You may not have a network connection. How are you still productive with that customer? And Dolby is one of the examples we use with a Salesforce.com customer who's using our technologies to work together to enable them to have their Salesforce go out and talk about how they can enable better audio-visual systems using this app. So it's happening today.
What do you guys make of Microsoft Azure and all the announcements that we heard?
What was the name of it? Azune?
Ooh.
Sorry.
So is that the beginning and end of your commentary, Mark?
No, I think it's fantastic that they're coming in and saying that they're going to have something one day. And I think, no, but that's totally fair. I mean, I think it's great because our customers need to hear that this is real. Still, most customers don't even know this is even possible.
Yeah.
Most customers still think they still have to do all the capital expenditures and operating expenses and all the stuff. And I mean, they don't know that it's much better to go with Google Apps than to buy Microsoft Office.
The way I'd say it is, I feel like I've been saying for 18 months now that comparing Google Apps to Office was apples to oranges. And I sort of feel like, great, bring it out there. We'll finally be able to have apples to apples, and we think our apples will taste better. So, it's great. It's not going to be here for a while, so we have a great opportunity to extend the lead that we have in terms of online applications for productivity and communications. But it's a great endorsement, finally, by Microsoft that this is the future. And so I would assume, and I'd hope that means a lot of their customers are going to be now evaluating what steps to take, and we think Google makes perfect sense to be part of that.
So
and software developers, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that was at PDC, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the keynote at PDC was that, I mean, the first thing Reazi said was, it's the end of software, and cloud computing is the direction, and all ships need to go in that way, and I know I've got to turn Microsoft around, and we're going to do it, and here's the examples. And then he said, look, it's not going to be ready for 2 years, but we're giving you this future strategy, which is, of course, what they've always done, and that's the right thing, you know, for them to do. But, you know, now we need to take advantage of that also and say, look, you have choices. You can look at Azure, you can look at, you know, Force.com, you can look at all these different platforms that are available, and you can make the right choice based on the type of app that you're building.
So Paul, from where you sit, you're kind of a neutral technology provider, you know, underlying a lot of enterprise software, you know, as it tries to move to the cloud. I mean, how do you handicap the various cloud platforms? I mean, do you see anything from where you sit that would tell us where people are going to go?
Well, I think there are some interesting aspects to all of this. I think the Microsoft Azure announcement was, as Marc said, was a great effort by Ray to kind of turn the oil tanker, which is a tough thing to do because, as you
make a really strong public statement and then you look really stupid otherwise.
Have discussed before. I mean, it's unlikely that there'll ever be a business as good as the old Windows and Office business. So it takes a lot of guts to steer away from that direction.
Well, you tried, what, 10 years ago to get Microsoft to steer away from it and failed, right?
That being said, I think one of the challenges of these platform as a service plays is that they're highly proprietary. It's really about getting apps into my cloud and keeping them there. And I think it's going to be an interesting challenge for developers to realize that they're being asked to make big bets. That if you throw in your lot with Azure, you've thrown in your lot with Azure, and that's your platform, and you better like it. I still think that there's room, and we haven't seen this play out completely yet, to see other sources of technology that are more open and more standardized. And,
so if you were an enterprise software developer, say, I mean, there's different classes of people here, but there's, you know, a set of people from enterprises, there's a set of people from startups. Startups are kind of voting with their feet. They're kind of saying, if they're doing business startups, maybe they're doing stuff on Force or on App Engine.
How many people here are from enterprises? Raise your hand. So about 5%. How many people here are from startups? Raise your hand. Okay, about 10.
So,
and who are the rest of the people? How many people have jobs? Raise your hand.
How many are from Salesforce.com?
I'm the only one. Oh, we got one there. All right.
But if you were kind of trying to give people direction about, you know, what choices would increase their degrees of freedom in the future versus lead them to more lock-in, what would you recommend? You know, and what are you guys going to do? You know, if in fact, you know, Paul's comment is right, and that there is this tendency to lock in.
I think that what I see happening on the cloud right now is very similar to the early computing revolution, where there are many different operating systems not compatible with each other. If you build an application on one of these cloud-hosted systems today, it's very difficult to move it to another one. There aren't good standards, there aren't good common technologies across them right now. So you do have a level of real lock-in on the cloud now, both in terms of your application running there and on the data that you're actually aggregating there. And so that's risky. We risk balkanization of the web kind of on the server side. You know, we've been fighting it on the client side, getting consistency there for the past decade. Suddenly the cloud is now actually we're at a risky juncture right now in terms of continuity of technology there.
It also means, though, that it's likely there'll be some winners and some big losers. Yeah. Right? And it's probably too early to call a race.
And it'll be hard to move from the losers, too.
Yeah. So which one of you guys is going to be winner?
Well, I think there's a couple of comments I'd like to make, which is, you know, I think it's interesting from what people, at what level people need to succeed. Like, I don't know, it'd be interesting to ask Marc if Amazon were to come to you and say, look, I can provide your basic compute and storage services for a cost cheaper than you can provide it, I'm sure Marc would move. I mean, you don't need to be vertically integrated.
Yeah, our model though is model is very, very different than the reason that we want to cooperate and fully integrate with Amazon's core services is because for our customers and for our developers, there are certain aspects of their applications that they're going to want to use that environment. A, they might want to burst storage, or B, they may want to burst compute cycle. They may want to develop in Java or Ruby on Rails, or operate more on the LAMP stack for certain parts of their application. So we want to be able to provide those aspects. And our data centers are so small, they only have about 500 computers in them, and that's because everything happens in our managed environment. It's a complete software system. So we don't let you bring outside software that was written to run on individual computers into our world. It's a non-virtualized environment. It's a controlled environment. So that creates a tremendous level of efficiency and operability for us, and then gives us the ability to exit for whether it's social apps for Facebook or Amazon or Google for productivity, et cetera.
I would just add, I think developers, will have choices to use very commoditized LAMP stack approaches and be left with a lot of the burden that you would expect to have there. And then in different ways, and they'll have different choices to take a different cut at it and take advantage of services that Marc's company or my company or others will add. That'll say you can operate it, you can program at a higher level and have a lot of services provided to you. Now you have to judge whether some form of lock-in or some sort of code rewrite is possible in the future, and it'll never be perfect, but I actually thinking about code portability, data portability, trade it off versus the benefit you're going to get on using something that, yes, you can call it proprietary, but actually may take care of a lot of things for you. And in the end, you have to make judgment calls, and there's no single answer.
Yeah. So if you guys look ahead at the future and you think about, what can we do to take better advantage of the cloud? Right now, we've had various steps forward. Just, hey, wait, we can, as you said, do burst storage or burst compute. But, what's the potential of the grid of all connected computers? What's the potential of the grid of all, does storage have to be localized? What happens when, there's obviously a lot in what Microsoft has talked about with sync. How does that work? When do we even get beyond sync, to just sort of seamless, transparency? The data just happens to be where you are. How do we have to think about almost like a new operating system layer that gives us the features that make that cloud just invisible?
Can I take a stab at that?
Yeah.
I think one of the critical things is we need to find new data representations and new ways of annotating data, because I think a lot of the business models that we see on not the enterprise side, but on the consumer side, whether they be search, social networking, free email, they're all weak forms of what I call information marketplaces. In other words, to a certain degree or less, you're either advertently or inadvertently exposing some of your personal information, and people are operating a marketplace that gives others access to that information. In other words, if you're using search, when you use search, basically you're exposing a little bit of your personal information, namely what you're typing into that search box, and putting it into a marketplace where others bid to add value to it, give you search results, etc. And Google's got very wealthy of operating that marketplace. But I think that generalizes to this notion of how do we selectively and securely make information available so other parties can add value to that information in many, many different situations. And that really is what will drive, I think, the economics of a large part of the cloud going forward. And there's some very tough problems to be solved to really do that.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about a generalized form of information mashups.
Right. But there's there's a really kind of interesting architectural issue that I see on the web. What we've ended up with are huge information aggregators. Whether it's Google aggregating all the pages on the web or Facebook trying to aggregate all the people. And there's an entirely different architecture, which I see sort of researchers, like I think I just met with some people at Imperial College in London, new architecture for personal data. Sounded a lot like what you were trying to do at
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing. You can invert this model.
Yeah, can you invert the model?
You can turn this into a reverse marketplace.
Yeah.
Where you as the individual control who gets to see and access and add value to your information under terms and conditions that you set.
Yeah.
And I think, Marc has some interesting experience of this in how he's operating his business, because it's not just that people can go and get easy to set up services, but the fact that he is in some ways a custodian of their information, is the fact that he's the custodian of all these businesses' information allows him to add value to that information. He can look across aggregate trends and say, look, I'll reflect back to you additional information if you put your information.
That's back to your information bank. It
Right.
grows
So-
more valuable
so
by
I think
being
you
with
see
other
this
people.
pattern emerging in many different places. And
But that's still the aggregation play. I'm really thinking, particularly as we move to mobile devices, and I start thinking about, I carry, and also more mobile storage. I carry my personal cache of things around with me. We haven't really inverted the model. We're still kind of, we put our data somewhere, somebody else.
I think there's some really tough and interesting problems to be
Yeah.
solved there. And I think there are a lot of interesting small companies working on that. And I
Yeah.
think if you have this conference 10 years from now, it'll be a very different set of folks sitting up here.
I mean, I'm not sure we aren't 80 or 90% the way towards solving it. I was just saying to Marc back there, I mean, I work on 2 Macs during the day. I switch between them, whatever one happens to be near me. I work on my computer at home. And we're obviously, eating our own dog food and far down the road, but we use Marc's product, we use our product, and there's nothing on my client. I think of it as a semi-disposable device. And it doesn't matter whether I use my BlackBerry or my new G1 or my Mac, or if someone made me work on a PC. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Devices are for
But I think,
convenience,
Dave,
convenience
So
and personal
what
experience.
okay, let me ask you a couple of things that people might be worried about. They're worried about security. They're worried about privacy.
They should be. Those are the right questions. How secure is my data? How much trust do I have in the entity that's holding it? And how good are they relative to other choices at protecting that data? Those are exactly.
So what's your take on how good is it? How good are they?
That's all about transparency. I mean, you've got to be, as a vendor, 100% open. That's where we run a website called trust.salesforce.com, which exposes to you, not just our customers, the status of all of our systems. We have a security tab that outlines all the security threats they're aware of. We show, we have to disclose as much as we possibly can to show you exactly what's going on. Not all vendors are doing that. We
So
think that's
how would
extremely
you
important.
rate? There's sort of an interesting thing. Was on the Google blog the other day in
Yeah.
terms of uptime. We talked about this, Dave. People have the idea that cloud reliability is not as great as, sort of say, enterprise software. You guys made the case that actually you had better uptime than a typical enterprise.
Yeah,
app.
I mean,
Can you talk
I
about
think
that?
the trajectory is that operating in a cloud environment at fairly massive scale, you will have more reliability and performance from any place in the world than you will on a installed system that you try to build yourself.